Okay, so Shin Lamed Ches Seif Beis. Yesh Matirim, very interesting case. Yesh Matirim Le'imale Yehudi Lenagin B'Klishe B'Chubas. So we're talking about the Issa not to play musical instruments on Shabbos. That's what we spoke about in Sif Aleph. And now the question is, can you tell a non-Jewish person to play an instrument at a chuppah, b'chuppos? So, for example, back in the day, there's a famous tshuva of the Ramah, where there's correspondence between his cousin, the Marshal, and the Ramah. And the Marshal was very critical of the practice in Krakow, where they had weddings on Friday. Because they were so poor, they could only afford one meal a week. So they would double up their Shabbos Suda with making a wedding. And they'd have a chasna on a Friday, and then the actual Suda would be on Friday night. But what are you going to do about music? So they would have non-Jewish people playing. So this is one of the sources for it. That they would play. Even if his guitar string broke, you could tell him to fix it. Mishum kvoit chosen v'kala. Aval belav hochi osa. Umiu. Bizman hazeh noagu lahakam mitam she'yizbar b'simen she'achazeh le'inyan tipuach v'rikud. Because the reason why we make them nowadays is because, we'll be explaining in the next sif, the same as tipuach and rikud, that dancing, in the next simon, the dancing and clapping and things like that, we allow, in certain circumstances, l'kavod mitzvah. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Sif Kotzen Ches. Because like we've said, playing an instrument on Shabbos is itself an Issa Drabanan. You're not doing any malacha there. And Gezeira, Shemi Yisakim Klishe, its whole thing is a Gezeira, maybe you'll come to fix some musical instruments. V'amir le'en Yehudi gamkin en el Issa Drabanan. Amir le'akum is an itself an Issa Drabanan. And therefore, the Havishvus to Shvus is two Drabanans. Of a Mokum Mitzvah, and when in a situation where it involves a mitzvah, where, for example, playing music to be mesameach chosen v'kala, v'shari would be allowed shvus to shvus mokum mitzvah v'chanal the siman shin zayin seif hey ayin sham v'yesh mekom shenogu lahachim b'zeh. There are places where we machmir im lo shechinim lezeh mer Shabbos v'lo yom le Shabbos klum. There are places where machmir, unless you told them, you instructed them before Shabbos, and you organized the band to play on Shabbos, and you didn't say anything on Shabbos, or if the guy came along, the klezmer band came along in Krakow themselves, that would also be allowed. It's a fascinating tshuva with the Marshal and the Ramah, that the Marshal is very critical of the practice in Krakow, and the Ramah defends it, and the Ramah's very different personality. He was very soft and gentle, and he's zachriya, and then the Marshal criticizes the Ramah's dikduk. He says, by the way, you wrote back to me, you're mixing up Lashon Nekeva with Lashon Zocha, and he was critical of his BH, of his dikduk. And the Ramah writes back, he goes, Kvad peh v'kvad Lashon anochi. Yeah, that's what he writes back. So, there's always two ways of dealing with it. Rabbi Wine speaks about it. When the Pesach, when he's writing the Tshuva, how particular has he got to be about his BH, about his dikduk, and the main thing is they get the point across, but it's not different themes, different thoughts. Okay, let's just finish off. Siv Cotton Tess. So he says you're even allowed to tell the non-Jewish person to fix the instrument. Because he's of the opinion that this being Mesameach Chosen V'Kala is on a higher level and more important, pressing mitzvah than other divrei mitzvah. And therefore, even if it's a melacha d'oraisa, we're allowed to tell the non-Jewish person to fix it, even though fixing it could involve a melacha d'oraisa. It says the Gaon. But when that shitta which says you're allowed to tell the guy to do a tikkun klisheh is only according to the opinion which says that you're allowed to tell a non-Jewish person to do a melacha d'oraisa ledvar mitzvah. V'imkein ledidon d'sovrin lahaloch kedas rav paskim sha'isrin gam b'zeh also. We, however, paskin that telling a non-Jewish person to do a d'oraisa for a tzorech mitzvah is not allowed. And therefore, similarly over here, we would not allow him to be masakin klisheh according to the Gaon. It would be also to tell a non-Jewish person to play music, unless they come themselves, or they prepared it Erev Shabbos. To have instruments in shul playing, accompanying the choir Shabbos morning is asa. V'ayim b'shal shuvas chasm soifa chelik shishi siman peivov shehevi rayas le'eser af b'chol lenagim b'pesach nes b'shas atfila b'prat b'Shabbos ein shom heta. Certainly on Shabbos, but even during the week. And he's talking about b'chugesem lo selechu. This is a good source for musical hallels whether that's allowed. The Chasam Sofer took a very strict view. Again, he's fighting against reform, and that was a popular sort of development in his day. Okay, whether it applies nowadays, most people are allowed it, but there are other issues there. Nagin lahakel, Ratzalema ha'amir lenagin b'shas simcha shel mitzvah, v'belvush mashma also kim b'simchas chasam v'kala v'ayim beli rabba. Okay, l'inin tipuach v'rekud pirush. Kimen de medina yeshayim d'havelon lemishri lenagin b'zmanenu b'klisheh. They're allowed to play musical instruments nowadays. They ain't on the b'kiyim b'sizla, because like we said yesterday, that there's no, earlier, that we're not b'kiyim nowadays in fixing things, and therefore lekel lemigzu shem yisakin. We don't have to make a takana. Lochein al kol ponim shori ha'amir len yehudi lenagin. Therefore we allow. Because of the whole thing of klishir is a bit distant nowadays, we're not really bocky in fixing things. Therefore, we allow Amir Lein Yehudi Lenagin. That's what the Ramah is based on. V'ayin b'mogin Avram shehiskim without kol ponim also lemel in Yehudi lesakin klishir v'afilu mishum kovad chasun hakala. So to ask him to pay would be okay. To play would be okay, but not to tell him to fix the instruments. Okay, but say that we'll leave it there.